So who are the people that have undeniably influenced your life? I am Vince Miller. Welcome to the Daily Devotional. We are starting a brand new series today on the book of 1 Samuel. Hopefully you have this scripture journal in your hand. This is a rich and expansive story. And each week I'm going to provide a bird's eye view of each chapter on Mondays, followed by 6 devotionals from that chapter for the rest of the week, for a total of 31 weeks because there's 31 chapters. And this is going to allow us to explore the larger context of the story at the beginning of the week and then the smaller details for the remainder of that week. Now, 1 Samuel is divided into 3 major parts discussing 3 important men. Part 1 is the story of Samuel, of course. That's chapters 1 through 8. Part 2 is the story of Saul, the first monarch, chapters 9 through 14. And then part 3 is the story of Saul and David, the 10th part of the story, chapters 15 through 31. But today we begin in chapter 1, and here are the first few verses just to get you going and get the stage set. It reads, "There was a certain man of Ramathaim-zophim of the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Zuph, an Ephrathite. He had 2 wives." Interesting, 2 wives. The name of the one was Hannah, and the name of the other Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Interesting beginning here already, right? 2 wives, don't do that. Okay, the story begins with Samuel's father and the events surrounding Samuel's birth. In chapter 1, we read about 6 different people, 6 men and women with undeniable influence. Over the next few days, we will explore the lives of these characters, each with a unique story and impact. For some, it was a positive and a spiritual influence, and for others, well, not so much. Stay tuned as we uncover and discover their roles in this story. Now, as I have already hinted, this book predominantly tells the story of Samuel, a man with incredible spiritual influence. But here's the immediate backdrop of this entire book. It's about 1050 BC. Leadership was a burning issue in the minds of the people of Israel. For over 200 years after entering the Promised Land, Israel went through intense social turmoil bordering on chaos. Maybe just a little bit like the social turmoil we're experiencing in our country today, but far, far, far worse. Joshua was the man who led them from the desert into the Promised Land, but as we learn, people were not listening or following God because spiritual drift doesn't take long, just a couple of 100 years. Now, just before 1 Samuel, this book here, we discover a sobering observation at the end of the book of Judges. It's in chapter 21, verse 25. It reads, "In those days, there was no king in Israel." Here it comes. "Everyone did what was right in his own eyes." Sounds like anarchy, doesn't it? Well, it was. Israel was in the middle of a profound leadership crisis. But right on time, Samuel was born and emerged as one of the greatest judges and prophets in the history of Israel, who would transition the nation from a theocracy to a monarchy, led by 3 subsequent kings, and you know them. They are Saul, David, and of course, the third one is Solomon, David's son. Samuel would indeed be one of the greatest influencers in all of the Old Testament, but in chapter 1, there are people who influenced him even before he was born. And these people played a role in this story and had an influence, good or bad, on the events of his early life. And we will look in detail at all 6 of these people. But again, let's return to that question that I asked at the start. Who are the people who have undeniably influenced your life? You see, there are people influencing you, some positive and others negative. Their character, their attitudes, their lifestyles, their proximity, their choices, and their faith have an impact on you. So who are you spending your time with? At the same time, we are all leaders in some capacity, right? And we influence others. So the other side of this question is, how are you influencing the people around you? Does your character, attitude, lifestyle, proximity, choices, and faith positively impact those around you? Well, as we read chapter 1 over the next week, I encourage you to take a personal assessment of those influencing you and the influence you have. And let's see what we learn and discover together from 1 Samuel chapter 1. I love you guys. We'll see you right back here again tomorrow.